Welcome to Creative Tian channel. Today we want to talk about motif cams for brother knitting machine. There are basically two types of motif cams. This one is for standard gauge knitting machine, and this one is for brother 260 knitting machine. We start with the bulky one. Because this is bulky, so the piece is much longer than the standard gauge. This is a standard gauge for 24 stitches, and this is for 24 stitches brother bulky knitting machine. And there's a left piece and right piece, and you can just snap in. And the way to use it is very simple. You decide where you want it and just snap it down. And usually I put it in the center around the 0 because that's the center of your pattern. If we move it to the side, it's still centered on the 0. Now you can see the 24 stitches are against this motif cam, and the other one can go back to the A position. So it holds the stitch in this position. So I think the limit is that you can do one punch card pattern, 24 stitches, and you cannot isolate the pattern that's smaller than 24 stitches. If you know a way to do it, please leave a comment below. And for the setup on the carriage, there is a dial called SM, Single Motif. Usually we go to KC to engage the punch card, but the single motif is one we use when we use the single motif cam. And the rest setting are the same as regular punch card or fair iron knitting. You press this in for multicolor and place the yarn in the front. And it's the same for standard gauge machine. This one is a 24 stitch one, and you can just place it behind and just snap it down. So the pattern will only knit for these 24 stitches, and the other area will not knit. You'll be just plain stockinette stitch. And for the setup, it's the same. This is my brother 8A1. I have a SM here for single motif. And normally we use KC for punch card. And there's a MC button here. You press it in for multicolor. And the rest are the same for regular punch card knitting or fair iron knitting in this case. And when I buy the motif cam for the standard gauge, it comes with many little pieces. And it's pretty much the same, but you can expand it, make it longer. See the two little pieces? This is the right and left side, so that's the outermost part. And these two pieces, each one is 24 stitches. You can snap them in together, so it makes longer. And at the end, you have to place the left and right edge. So this way you make an extra long motif cam. Or you can just use one of the center. It makes a smaller motif. And you can install the same way. Just snap down into the channels. And it's a good idea to center the pattern on the 0. So the center of the punch card pattern will be center of this motif cam. But you can also play with it and move it around and see which design you like. And there's another piece that's just 24 stitches. It says 24. And you don't have to snap in the left and right side. It's just one piece. I'm going to try the single motif cam with a punch card I made last week. You can find the free download link if you want to use the same pattern. So I just insert the punch card and connect the ends with a little clip. And just make sure the pattern matches. If you're not doing continuous pattern, it doesn't matter. And all the supplies can be found on eBay. or Etsy. Some of them you can find it on Amazon too. Now we turn the dial. So it starts with row 1. This is the brother punch card, so the single will be a little bit different. And press this down to the circle to lock the card. And I insert the motif cam in the center. The center is 0. So only the 24 stitches in the center will have the pattern, and outside that will be plain stitches. Now I'm going to cast on from left 20 to right 20, so you can see the difference, the extra stitch and the motif in the center. I'm just going to do simple E-wrap and knit a few rows of plain stitches. I'm using the worsted weight yarn, so I use tension 6 and just normal knitting, pointing to the end. Now we are ready to knit the motif. First I check the pattern. It's on the first row and it's locked. That's the circle in the bottom. For the dial, I can switch to single motif, SM. Check your gauge and then we can start to knit one row. You can see the needles are selected only below the motif cam, and the other areas are not selected. Now we have to unlock the punch card and start the multicolor knitting. Press the MC. For the standard gauge, it's only one button, the MC there, for the fair isle knitting. Now thread the second color yarn and place in the B slot. And place some clip. Now we can start knitting. Now we will have to stop wrapping the edges of the motif. That's very important for motif knitting. I give you a sample of what I did without wrapping the yarns. You can see the holes here, the back side. It creates a gap here between the motif and the plain stitches. That's why we have to wrap it. And to wrap it, we have to cut a piece of yarn and use a similar color. I'm going to use the brown one and try to keep it a little bit longer. And you can fold it in half. This is what I have. And after folding in half, you make a knot. That's the first stitch, like that. And we want to wrap the needle that's outside the outermost stitch, and it will be close to the carriage side. So here, this one is the outermost needle that's selected. So we want the stitch next to it. That'll be this one. So place your stitch in the hook and push it back. And make sure all the stitches are still in the hook and not going behind the hook. So that's the first stitch. And you can see we have two ends. I'm going to use the left side for the left side of the motif and the right side for the right side of the motif. Or you can cut two separate yarns and attach it separately. It doesn't make much difference. Now we are going to knit next row. Now I'm going to pick up one side of the yarn and wrap it on the right side. And this is the last needle that's selected. So I will use the next stitch. The next needle, pull out a little bit and just wrap it. I like to wrap it toward the center, but I don't think it makes much difference. And then push the needle back to the B position. So this one is wrapped. Now we do the left side again. This is the last selected stitch, so we want to wrap the one outside that stitch. So we pushed out a little bit, but not too much because we want to keep all the yarns in the hook. Wrap it, push it back to the B. Now we do the right side. This is the last stitch, and you can see our yarn is still here. We'll wrap this needle that's next to this stitch. Push it back. Try not to get tangled with these two extra yarns. Now we're back to the left side. This is the last selected needle. So we wrap the next one, pull out gently, and just wrap it. Push it back to B. And we just keep going like that until all patterns are knitted. And when I only have 2 needles in the center, I know that's the end of my first diamond. So if I only want 1 diamond, I can stop around this time. So I have 2 stitches continuously for 2 rows. I know that's the end of my pattern. Now I'm going to change back to plain knitting. You just switch it to N, and all the button here will be back to plain, and I can just cut off the second color. So I click the second color and I will just continue knitting a few rows of plain stitches. And I can bind off or just put on waste yarn and take it off. That's a finished pattern. And you can see the back side, that's the wrapping. If the wrapping yarn gets too loose, you can pull it tight a little bit. So you can see the edge is very neat. Compared to the edge we did the first time without the wrapping. You can see the difference. This one I reverse the color so the background is red. And the first one I didn't place the motif cam in the center, the 0. I have it off to the left side so you can see the pattern is off. This is supposed to be the center diamond, like the center diamond here. This one I place it in the center, the 0. So the center of the pattern is a center here. But it still creates an interesting look. So it's up to you how you want to knit it. So that's it about the brother motif cam. For the single machine, it will be different. I hope you enjoy knitting with motif cam. It takes me a long time to figure out how it works. Thank you for watching and talk to you next week.